Welcome to the Happier Life Project, the official podcast from the award-winning mental health and wellness app, My Possible Self. Hosted by broadcaster and journalist Gabby Sanderson.
Hello and welcome to the Happier Life Project. I'm Gabby, and today, everything you thought you knew about mindfulness will be challenged, explored, and questioned, backed up by groundbreaking studies led by today's guest, coined the mother of mindfulness, that show just how powerful an influence the mind has on our body. When it was confirmed that I would get to interview such an incredible lady whose pioneering research and extensive contributions to the field of mindfulness, particularly from a psychological perspective, has revolutionised the field, I literally had to pinch myself. Ellen J. Langer is a distinguished professor of psychology at Harvard University. In 1981, she made history as the first woman to receive tenure in psychology at Harvard, which is a significant academic milestone. Ellen's lifetime of expertise and trailblazing research focuses on the illusion of control, decision-making, aging, and mindfulness theory, which has led to numerous academic honours. Ellen has authored several influential books, including Mindfulness, The Power of Mindful Learning, On Becoming an Artist, Reinventing Yourself Through Mindful Creativity, Counterclockwise, Mindful Health and the Power of Possibility, and what we will be talking a lot about today, the mindful body, thinking our way to lasting health, which demonstrates through practical steps and scientific research you can take control of your mindset by using your thoughts and perspective to help improve your well-being and live better, longer, and happier lives. According to Ellen, practicing mindfulness does not require meditation. And by being more present and not living mindlessly, which most of us do not realise we are doing for most of the time, we can free ourselves from limiting beliefs, negative self-talk, and even heal the body and reverse the clock, which you may think right now seems like a crazy notion, but once you hear Ellen talk and share some of the results of her studies, you will be absolutely blown away, just as I was. So, with that in mind, ready to find a healthier, happier you? Let's get started. Welcome, Ellen Langer, to the Happier Life Project podcast. Absolutely thrilled to be speaking to you today. I am just so in admiration of your perspective on life. And if more people had the same kind of outlook, I think the world would be a much happier place.
Yes, one of the good things that you might have read in the book is that mindfulness turns out to be contagious, which is a good thing, because if enough of us are mindful, then maybe even more of us will be mindful. And it does lead to a very different world. But separate from changing the world, there is enough reason that I present in the book for us to change ourselves. Mm-hmm. We have an opportunity to be healthy and happy by just changing our minds. It's very easy. And that's the way we're going to change the world, by each of us changing ourselves.
Absolutely. And us coming from the background of being part of a mental health and wellness app, I'm definitely going to talk to you a lot about like mental health and how that weaves in, and the conjunction between mental health and the body. But just to kind of go back a little bit first, for any of our listeners that might be meeting you for the first time, and indeed this topic, when we look at mindfulness, and I think about even some of the exercises.
What do I mean by it?
Well, I think about some of the exercises that we've got on our app, and it would be like the body scan, observing a blade of grass, like looking at the details of a raisin. These are some of the classic mindful exercises that we are maybe told would be good for us.
Yes, all of those come from our work, regardless of what other mindfulness programs they're attached to. Let's start at the beginning. Mindfulness, that many people think has to do with meditation, has nothing to do with meditation. Meditation is not mindfulness. Meditation is a practice you engage in with the hope of it leading to post-meditative mindfulness. And it's great, but different from what we do. What we do is simply notice. That's all. And when you notice things about things you thought you knew, you come to see, wow, you didn't know them as well as you thought. Let's say you live with somebody, go notice 3 new things about them, and they will feel cared for, and your relationship will improve from this very simple process. So there are 2 ways in this scheme of things to become mindful. It is not a practice, it's a way of being. Right? You don't take yourself out of the world. In some sense, you put yourself more in the world. Top down is to appreciate that uncertainty is the rule, not the exception. We don't know, but we're taught that we should know. So lots of people pretend that they know. And in fact, we can't know because everything is always changing. Everything looks different from different perspectives. I was at this horse event many years ago, and I am Harvard, Yale all the way through. I'm the A+ student you hated in class. Okay, so I'm at this horse event, and this man says to me, can I watch his horse for him because he's going to get his horse a hot dog? I know that's ridiculous. Horses don't eat meat, right? Remember, the A+ student. He comes back with the hot dog, and the horse ate it. And that's when I realized everything I thought I know could be wrong. Now, many of the things we think we know were derived from science. Science can't give us absolutes. Science can only give us probabilities. So you run a study, and if it's significant, that means if you run it again, you're likely to get the same findings. So, for instance, if I did a study with horses and hot dogs, many horses wouldn't eat the hot dogs. Not all the horses. And of course, it depends on how hungry the horse is, how much grain is mixed in with the hot dog, and so on. These are the subtle variables in our studies. Okay, so science gives us maybes. Somehow our teachers, our parents, magazines translate these maybes to absolutes. So we think we know. So if I asked you a question, Gabby, how much is 1 + 1? This is the one thing everybody thinks they know. How much is 1 + 1? 2. Yeah, but no, it's not always 2. If you're adding 1 pile of laundry plus 1 pile of laundry, 1 + 1 is 1. If you're adding 1 wad of gum, chewing gum, to 1 wad of chewing gum, 1 + 1 is 1. If you're adding 1 cloud to 1 cloud, 1 + 1 is 1. And the other day, somebody sent me, who heard me say this, sent me this other one. So if you took 1 pizza and you put another pizza on top of it, so 1 pizza plus 1 pizza, you'd have 2 pizzas. However, if you took 1 lasagna and you added a lasagna on top of it, you'd still only have 1. It'd be a bigger lasagna, but still only 1 lasagna. So in the real world, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 as or more often as it does. Now, the important thing about this is not adding, but recognizing now, if someone were to ask you after this now, how much is 1 + 1, you wouldn't mindlessly blurt out 2. And all of a sudden you'd have choices that you didn't have before when you accepted the world as absolute. You say, well, I could say 1, I could say 2. And even because if you're using a base 10 number system, 1 + 1 can be written as 10. So should I say 1, 2, 10? You get to decide. You become sensitive to context, right? Rather than behaving like an automaton. All right. So this is from top down, knowing everything is always changing. Everything looks different from different perspectives. So we can't know. Bottom up, ask yourselves questions about the things you think you know. Look for something new. And that's where people after me had derived this the raisin study. You don't have to look at a raisin for something new. You can look at anything because we tend to hold things still and confuse the stability of our mindsets with the stability of everything is changing. You want to hold it still, fine, you're going to miss out. Because when you're mindful and you're open, you have choices available to you. And when in this act of noticing, the neurons are firing, and 45 years of research shows that it's literally and figuratively good for your health and extends your life. Right. So that's small characteristics of a very simple process. But let me say one more thing. When you're having a good time, you're being mindful. You can't have a good time if you're on automatic pilot, because essentially you're not there. Now, interesting, in 45 years, what I found, sadly, is that most of us are not there most of the time. But when you're not there, you don't know you're not there. All right. So I'm here to say, wake up, because there's a world for us to experience that is just passing all of us by.
Right. And we're not there most of the time. We're being mindless. So that's, right. I want to go into that with you too. Talking about your book, The Mindful Body, Thinking Our Way to Lasting Health, everything you were just explaining there, we're applying that to our health and well-being. So let's take a diagnosis. 1 + 1 doesn't always make 2. Going back to what you
so when you have a diagnosis, the most important thing probably is to know that that diagnosis is a maybe, not an absolute, right? It means these symptoms, or this group of symptoms, usually means A, B, and C, but not always. All right. So that means that you should do what the doctor says, maybe, unless the doctor says there's nothing you can do. And there's always something you can do. You know, early on, we gave elderly people mindfulness instructions, just active noticing, and they live longer. So no matter what your diagnosis is, and usually what happens is when you get some dread diagnosis, you become more mindless, you become depressed, you tune out of the world, and so on. And if you do the very opposite of that, you're going to be helping yourself. Right. Second, and I report this in the book, not from my lab, but there's evidence that imagined exercise, this is wild. Imagining yourself exercising yields virtually the same effect as real exercise. So you're in bed and you can't exercise, but you can in your mind, and you'll benefit from that. And then I derived a treatment that is based on mindfulness that seems to be very effective and very available to all of us. All right. So it's called attention to symptom variability. Now that's a mouthful, but attention to variability is really just being mindful. It means noticing change. And when you're mindful, you're noticing change, right? You hold everything still, you're being mindless. Okay, so when you're given a dread diagnosis, people tend to think their symptoms are going to stay the same or just get worse.
Yeah.
But nothing moves in only one direction. All right. So let's say the stock market is improving. The stock market's going crazy. It doesn't go up in a straight line. It goes up, it goes down a little bit, up, down. Same thing, you know, if it's going down, it doesn't go down in a straight line. Everything is always changing. So rather than presume your symptoms are going to be the same, if you get to notice how they're changing, you're going to start a process that's quite remarkable. So let's say I call you and I say, Gabby, how is whatever the symptom is? Is it better or worse than the last time? And then the important question is why? All right, so when you do this, several things happen. The first is that just having something to do, you feel better, because much of the time when we are given diagnoses of chronic illnesses, we just feel overwhelmed, nothing I can do. And that helplessness is not good for our health or our happiness.
Right.
Second, by noticing that now it's a little better, well, that's exciting, because you thought always it's going to just be this terrible, terrible thing. But third, most important, when you start asking, why now is it better or worse than before? That mindful search itself is good for your health, right? Mindfulness, neurons are firing, it's good for your health. And you may actually find a reason for why it's better or worse. Now, I believe that if you're looking for a solution, you're more likely to find one. So we call people throughout the week, throughout the day. How is the symptom now? Is it better or worse than before? And why? And we've done this with people who have multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, chronic pain, arthritis, a host of real disorders. And across the board, we get improvements.
Really?
Now, this was supposed to be my replacement of the placebo. So think about a placebo. You take this pill that's nothing, and you get better because you believe it's something. So the pill isn't affecting you. What's affecting you is you. So I wanted to find a way to make it so you can exercise that control over your health more directly. Okay, but the way I explain this to you for the research, we're still calling you. But most people have smartphones. Set the smartphone to ring in an hour. When it rings, ask yourself, how is the symptom now? Is it better or worse than before, and why? Then set it to ring in 2 hours and 10 minutes. Just keep varying it across the day, the week, and if you need, the second week. Now, the fun thing about this, or a positive thing about this, there's no downside. And you don't have to do this in place of seeking out medical care, but, can easily do it in addition and give the information you're getting to your doctor.
So how do you think then if we take like fatigue, because I'm sure this applies to a lot of our listeners who do struggle.
So it's interesting. Maybe we should have started at the beginning because I have so many studies in this book. And this book, by the way, was initially going to be a memoir. So I have a lot of very personal and fun stories in it as well. And then it became, whatever it is. One of the things that's very important to the book is the idea of mind-body unity. So, in the past, the medical world believed that the mind was totally irrelevant to disease. That I'm sure doctors wanted you to be happy, but the only way you were going to get sick was the introduction of an antigen. Okay. Now people talk about mind-body connection, which is good, but how are they connected? You've got really the same problem. How do you get from a thought to the body? And people can't answer. I say, no, this is all the wrong way of approaching this. Let's take the mind and the body and put it back together. They're just words. And let's see it as a single unit. Then wherever you're putting the mind, you're necessarily putting the body. And I have study after study, some of which I assume we'll talk about, where we put the mind in unusual places, and lo and behold, we end up with a different body. And, I believe that some of your listeners probably heard the BBC, The Young Ones, years ago, where they replicated my counterclockwise study. But let me tell you about the study itself.
Got that in my notes to make sure we bring up. Carry on.
Okay. So what we did was retrofitted a retreat. So it seemed as if it was 20 years earlier. It wasn't quite a Hollywood set because we were on a low budget, but it was pretty good. And then we had these 80, 90-year-old men living there as if they were their younger selves.
As if they'd gone back in time 20 years. So everything, right. Just so our listeners really understand, everything, like imagine 20 years ago from now, everything you saw, you smell, everything in the environment was 20 years past. Carry on.
Right. But so now we give them things to think about, to talk about, have discussions that are from the past, but they're supposed to talk about it as if it's just happening. All right. So we do everything we can to bring their minds back 20 years. As a result of this, their hearing improved, their vision, their memory, their strength, and they look noticeably younger. It's quite remarkable because to this day, and this was first run in 1979, to this day, I haven't heard old people, an 85-year-old's hearing or vision improve without medical intervention, and rarely with medical intervention. Here, we're doing it for ourselves. And that was the first of many studies on this notion of mind-body unity.
And how long was that retreat? Was it a week?
5 days, a week or 5 days.
Like no time at all, really.
Right. So, I mean, the bottom line here is that we have so much control over our health that we're not exercising. It's almost mind-boggling. Now, you asked me about fatigue.
Yeah.
So fatigue, oddly, surprisingly to your listeners, is really a psychological construct. They're saying, what? No, when I get tired, every bone in my, but remember your mind and body, one thing. So we have people in a sleep lab. They wake up and they see the clock. Unbeknownst to them, the clock is telling them they got 2 hours more sleep than they did, 2 hours fewer, or the amount of sleep that they got. And biological and cognitive functions follow perceived amount of sleep, the amount of sleep you thought you got, not the amount of sleep that you got. This is to me interesting. So I teach Harvard students, they're very smart. And I say to them, how far is it possible to run without keeling over? How far can we push the body before we get so fatigued we can't take another step? They know a marathon is 26 miles. So they start around 28, 29. And then it becomes like an auction. Somebody says 30, somebody else 32, 36. And then when somebody dares to say 50, everybody groans. Oh, are you kidding?
Yeah.
That's insane, right? Then I turn on a video of the Tarahumara, who are a tribe in Copper Canyon, Mexico, who as a rule can run over 200 miles without stopping. So the difference between what people think they can do and what we know they can do, and who's to say that the Tarahumara are running as much as one could run. Fatigue tends to be a belief. You have people, imagine you're word processing all day long, right? And your back is killing you. You can't wait to get home. And you go home and then you play the piano. Physically, it's the same activity, but contextually, it's something quite different. When you change the context, you often get totally renewed energy. And that's just, one piece of so many of the strange and I think wonderful findings we have that I report in the Mindful Body. Maybe let me just add one more of the mind-body unity test, which is the most recent. So we inflict a wound. It's a minor wound because I'm not a sadist. And even if I were, they wouldn't let me do that research. Okay? But so we give people a minor wound and then we have them in front of a clock. Again, unbeknownst to them, the clock is rigged. So for a third of the people, the clock is going twice as fast as real time. Time is speeding by. For a third of the people, the clock is going half as fast as real time. For a third of the people, it's real time. The question we're asking is, does that wound is going to heal real time, or does it heal based on perceived time, what that clock tells you? And I obviously wouldn't be sharing this with you if it weren't perceived time. Now, remember, you hurt yourself. Let's say you break a leg, and not to go on the stage or something where somebody will go break a leg, but you really break your leg. And I don't know how long it would take to heal, but let's say the doctor tells you it's going to take 3 months.
Right.
For argument's sake. It takes that long, it could take longer. That information that the doctor is giving you is only a probability. Many people take 3 months. Some people take, a month, some maybe even in 2 weeks. Some take 6 months and so on. But we lock ourselves into whatever that prognosis is, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we need to question it. Whatever information we're given, we need to know it's a maybe. And it's a maybe that may not speak to us.
Right.
Go on.
Oh, I get excited. No, I love it. No, it's just making me think about, I've heard, so some therapists will give a timeline. And again, I'm bringing it back to mental health. They'll be like even somebody I've worked with and somebody I was going to work with, both, they said it's going to take weekly sessions for 12 months to work.
That's good for their pocketbook.
Well, exactly. But then I've spoken to other therapists that go 12 weeks maximum. And if we haven't solved the problem, I'm not doing my job right. But I didn't. Okay,
but also there are some problems that take even less time than that. So let's say you're feeling that you're a failure and you just don't want to go on. And then you get a call from your prime minister who says they've done a lot of research and they've picked people who they're sure are top of the grade, who are extraordinarily competent, can go the distance, da-da-da-da-da-da. That one phone call that took 2 minutes could be life-changing. All right. So it depends on what the problem is, what the potential solutions are as to how quickly it can be solved. If you think you can't do something and then somebody shows you how and you do it, it's instant. It doesn't have to take 12 weeks. And I'm hoping that if people read and take seriously the mindful body, it'll cut down therapy and half, maybe even eliminate the need for much therapy. Because therapy, which is wonderful, but there's always a better way. That I have a lot of respect for my colleagues, researchers, therapists, and so on, who take a problem and make it better. But I have a large part of this Mindful Body book that shows how there's a better than better way. And I think that if reading it once doesn't teach you, then read it twice. If you're a quick reader, that's how long it's going to take you to.
We'll get the audio version as well, and then you can listen back and listen back.
Hear it twice.
Hear it, exactly. I just need to share something with you because I think this actually really supports everything that you're saying. We did a podcast on loneliness, and he is a GP in the UK who I think he was quite humble about it, but I think he's quite rare because he promotes lifestyle medicine, but he works for the NHS and he's written a book on lifestyle medicine and the importance of finding purpose and loneliness and connections. He said to me, because I put it to him, I doubt people could walk through your doors. And when he says, what can I help you with today? They say, doctor, I'm chronically feeling lonely. And he said they don't, but people come back hundreds of times with physical symptoms that are a direct product once he starts asking him more questions of like loneliness, like chronic inflammation, for example. And in fact, if you are chronically lonely now, there's research showing that it can actually take away up to 30% off your lifestyle.
Gabby, it's not a surprise because the mind and no, I don't mean it that way. Okay. Yes, you're right. It supports what I'm saying. If we understand the mind and body are one thing, so anything that's wrong with either the mind or the body is going to affect the mind or it's one. Yeah. If it affects you, it affects you. And and let me give another example of one of these mind-body unity studies that speaks volumes to how much control we have. And also when you're talking about you want people to be happier, it's easier to be happy if you're healthier. Again, completely the same, but I'll speak to the happiness separate from this. So this was a study on the nocebo effect. Now, everybody knows what a placebo is. You take something that's a sugar pill that you are led to believe is going to affect whatever you need to be improved on. You take it and you get better. The nocebo is the inside out opposite, sort of. You take something that actually has an effect, but you don't believe it has an effect. And what happens is there's no effect. Let me give you an example from other research. Do you know what ipecac is? People used to take, still, if you have a child, for instance, and they ingest poison accidentally, you give them ipecac to make you vomit. Okay, so ipecac makes you vomit. So this researcher, takes people who have problems vomiting. They just keep vomiting. He gives them ipecac and tells them it will stop their vomiting. Remember, this is medicine to make you vomit. You believe it's going to stop the vomit, and what happens? It stops the vomiting.
That is
so now lots of people say, you don't feel happy, go for a run. Go do something physical. Yeah. So let me tell you about the second study we did in the Mind Body series. So we take chambermaids who are doing lots of exercise.
So glad you bring this one up. This was my favorite one of your studies. Carry on.
Okay. So they're exercising all day long. When I ask them, how much exercise are you getting? They say they're not getting exercise. What? Yeah. Well, that's because they think exercise is what you do after work. And after work, they're just too tired. Okay, if you sit behind a desk all day, then that would be when you'd exercise after work. So very simple study. We divide them into two groups and we teach one group that their work is exercise. We change their mind. Making a bed is like working on this machine at the gym. Dusting is like working on this other machine, and so on. So we have two groups, one that doesn't know their work is exercise, one that knows their work is exercise. They take many, many measures. They're not eating any differently. One group isn't working any harder than they're basically the same, except for the change of mind. The group that now sees their work as exercise lost weight. There was a change in waist to hip ratio, body mass index, and their blood pressure came down just by changing their mind. Now, the piece that people don't understand or don't really think about with this, because it's remarkable, my gosh, is that their exercise is not helping them unless they think their exercise is helping them. All right. Our thoughts are so powerful, and we simply are not aware of it and not able to exercise the control over our health and well-being. So there's other data that I report by other people where if you imagine, I mentioned this already, you imagine doing exercise,
right?
It's almost the same thing as actually doing the exercise.
So you could imagine yourself to get biceps.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. Not my lab, but that's what the data from several of the labs is telling us. And remarkable. I think that just paying attention to even the few studies we've talked about now, and there's so many more that I report in the Mindful Body, people should, sit up and say, my goodness, I can control all of these things, because fatigue is largely a psychological construct. Weight loss follows from a change of mind. And, one of the things that interferes, I think, with people's happiness and well-being is stress.
Yeah.
And again, people need to understand that stress is psychological. Events don't cause stress. What causes stress are the views you take of events. If you open up that view and understand it more mindfully and see all the different things that it could be and the way it's actually an advantage and so on, the stress will dissipate. It's very hard for people to understand events aren't good or bad. We make them good or bad. So let's say we're having this nice conversation, at least I'm enjoying it, Gabby, and all of a sudden my internet goes out. It's, oh my gosh, yeah, good, I'll go and I'll have breakfast, which will be fine. That I think, I tell this to my friends that many of them put it on their refrigerators, the one-liner, I have many of these. This is, ask yourself, is it a tragedy or an inconvenience? It's almost always just an inconvenience. It's not a tragedy. And so then you can breathe more easily. But the important thing is that stress, I think, is the major cause of disease. Stress is the major cause of unhappiness. And stress is under our control, is a function of our mindlessness.
Well, I think we do need to clarify as well, mindlessness. I'm really curious on your thoughts on fertility with women, just going back to how powerful our thoughts are. And I guess I'm bringing my personal experience into it, not having had children, but I froze some eggs, but I didn't have the money to do it which was the recommended time. And the doctors treated me, even though I was paying them, like it was, what's the point? What's the point? It was very much like, well, you're not in the age demographic, of like mid-30s, therefore and then they followed it up by saying you should probably do it a few times, and I'm like, I don't just have access to all this additional money like, can we just focus on what I can do? Well, we were going to study infertility at one time. What happens in my lab is we have so many ideas. I trip over them. I have so many ideas. We can't get them all done. And I wish we had done this study on what I've called attention to symptom variability. Right.
That when people pay attention to the changes in their sensations and so on, they can exert more control over their health. Now, it's not surprising and not that infrequent that once a woman who's trying to get pregnant says, "Oh God, the hell with this,"
Yeah.
and just gives up trying and then has intercourse and conceives.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what prevents the process from going to fruition is stress. Reducing our stress is going to help everything that we want to do. And there's something in the book that I haven't talked about on lots of these podcasts that I'm doing. It seems like my new occupation.
You're very good at
it. Is about decision making. And the major stress for people is whatever decision they're trying to decide and they can't decide and they start going crazy and, and work themselves up, and that's bad for their health. So the decision theorists, I believe, and argue, I think, cogently, have it all wrong. And I'm not going to take the time now to explain, but I welcome people to read it in the book. The bottom line is what I will share. Rather than waste your time trying to make the right decision, you can almost randomly choose, but make the decision right. Just pick an outcome and then go with it and make it work for you. Basically, when you can't make a decision, it's because the choices are psychologically the same. If I say to you, do you want A or B? How are you going to make a sensible decision? You don't know anything about either one of them.
Right.
Then if you gather information and you find out A is $100 and B is $10,000, there's no decision process.
Yeah.
It follows mechanically. You're going to choose B. All right. Now, the main part of this, so I had a graduate class in decision making, and I said to them, all right, I want you to spend the week, do not make any decisions. Just randomly choose. You can have a little rule that the first alternative is the one you're going to take. You can flip a coin, roll dice, whatever you want to do. Just do not engage in a whole elaborate calculation. So they spend the week and they come back. So how was it? Oh, it was a wonderful week. It was a stress-free week. That you see, you can never assess which decision would have been better because you make a decision to take an action. As soon as you take the action, you can't try the alternative. Should I have this sandwich or this sandwich? Should I have this sandwich? And then you say, man, the other one would have been better. You try the other one, but now you're full. You're not as hungry.
Yeah.
Right. Should I go to Harvard or Yale? Oh, so I'll go to Harvard. I don't like it. So now I want to go to Yale, but you're not the same age. You've already had that first semester experience. You can never assess whether the decision is right or wrong. And remember, whether something feels good, is right or wrong, all depends on the way you frame it. There's a lot of information for people to digest. I think the main takeaway should be we have enormous control over our feelings, over our health that we haven't been tapping into. Yeah. And I'll tell you that there's so much where people think they're doing the right thing because it's better than, we'll say, the wrong thing, but it's not nearly as good as it could get. So let me give an example. I was asked to give this sermon in one of the Harvard churches many, many years ago. Now, I'm not religious, and whatever religion I have is I'm Jewish, so I don't spend time typically in churches, but I say yes because I say yes to everything. So, okay, what am I going to talk about? I have no idea. Then I think, well, maybe I'll talk about forgiveness. It's not religion, but it's religion-y. I could get away with it. I was shocked, Gabby, after I did a deep dive in my head about forgiveness. This is what I came up with. If you ask 10 people, is forgiveness good or bad? What are they going to tell you? It's good, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you ask 10 people, is blame good or bad? What are they going to tell you? Blame is bad, right? Yeah. But you can't forgive unless you blame. That's interesting. Our forgivers are our blamers. Gets even worse. Do you blame people for good things or bad things? You blame people for bad things. But things in and of themselves are neither good nor bad. So what do we have here? We have people who see the world negatively, who blame, and then forgive. Hardly divine. Okay, so the point is that if you blame, it's better to forgive than not. But there's a better than better way. This is a big statement here. I don't want anyone to ever forgive me for anything. I want people to understand me. Behavior always makes sense from the actor's perspective, or else the actor wouldn't do it. No one wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to be gullible, impulsive, and awkward. Right? So when you see anybody acting in a way where you want to disparage them,
Yeah.
those words, those negative attributions we make towards them are all mindless. What are they intending? So when you see me as gullible, and oh, Gabby, I mark the edge of the gullible continuum. I am more gullible. I've been taken by 2 sociopaths, not just one. Okay. So let's say I say to you, Gabby, help me become less gullible. Because we both look at my behavior and we say, Ellen, this is ridiculous. Okay. You're never going to succeed. Because going forward, I'm not being gullible. I'm being trusting.
Yeah.
Okay, you are so inconsistent, you need help. And I show you the ways you've been inconsistent, and you think, oh my gosh, this is terrible. So you try to change yourself. You're not going to be able to change yourself because you're not intentionally inconsistent. What you are is flexible. The point being, every single negative description of our behavior or anybody's behavior has an equally strong but oppositely valenced alternative. For every negative, there's a positive. So we did this with people. We gave them 200-300 behavior descriptions. And we say, circle those things you keep trying to change about yourself and you keep failing. So for me, I'd circle impulsive. I'd circle gullible. I won't tell you what else. Now you turn the page over, and in a mixed up order are the positive versions of these words. Mm-hmm. And now I ask you, circle those things you really value about yourself. My spontaneity and my being trusting. As long as I value being spontaneous, I'm going to be impulsive. As long as I value being trusting, I'm going to be gullible. So if you want to change me or you want to change yourself, the answer is to stop valuing that thing. Now, I like being trusting, so I no longer mind that I'm gullible because I don't want to give up being. I like that I'm spontaneous. So yes, sometimes I'm going to seem impulsive.
Yeah.
It's a very different way of viewing. And then you end up happy with yourself, right? When you pay attention to why you're actually doing what you're doing, there's always a good reason. You don't take yourself to task for it. Now, it doesn't mean you can't change your behavior. So let's say you're a heavy drinker and the person you live with or the world tells you, you've got to stop doing that to your liver. Well, nobody is drinking because of anything to do with their liver. Mm-hmm. Right. So now if I said to you, Joe, call him anything you want, gets anxious and does X and the anxiety goes away. Is that a rational thing to do? Yeah, sure. And then I plug in, he has some drinks. Okay, so now Joe is effectively controlling himself. If we didn't make him feel bad about himself, it'd be much easier to say, Joe, yes, the drinking takes away that anxiety, but let me show you 4 or 5 other ways you might get rid of it. Mm-hmm. Rather than beat him down and make him feel that he's a loser, in which case it's very hard to do anything going forward. Okay, so in general, people's behavior makes sense every time you find yourself describing and disparaging somebody, insulting somebody, thinking less of somebody. You yourself are being mindless.
But what if somebody's done you wrong, like they've been, infidelity or hurt you?
Sure. Infidelity. So it's kind of stupid, I think, although we all do it, at time one to swear that I will always love you. How do I know? And then down the road, all of a sudden, I don't feel the same way. You're suggesting that I should still act as if I do and be untrue to myself. Infidelity. Who wrote the rule book? This is going to sound so strange. I can't believe I'm going to say it. But who wrote the rule book that you should only have one relationship in your lifetime anyway? And how old should you be when you have that one relationship? So if I told you I'm going to be loyal to you, and then I'm disloyal, probably that's because you haven't made it easy for me to be loyal. You're a kid, and every time you do something that your mother doesn't like, she punishes you and she smacks you, right? And so she says, Johnny, did you do what? You're going to lie to save yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So telling the truth for Johnny is not safe. So now Johnny grows up and you're married to Johnny, Gabby, and you want Johnny to tell you the truth. You have to let Johnny know that you're not going to smack him, punish him the way his mother did. I think everybody would prefer to tell the truth than to lie. So if you make it easy for someone to tell you the truth, they're more likely to tell you the truth. A lot of the so-called infidelity, it's heavy. It's loaded with all sorts of beliefs about how life should be. But let's say I'm not happy. I'm just not happy. And I tell Joe or you, I'm not happy. And I give you all the reasons. And you don't make any change. Are you suggesting that I should live my whole life being unhappy? Because now I just met Susie or Irving, and gee, they think so much of me. And being with them is such fun.
Well, it's all context, isn't it? Because then maybe I've not had it's like you said, I've not had the guts to say I'm not happy. So I think,
I think that not only that it's not just not having the guts. I think we need to realize that people are capable of change. Now, we don't realize that people are capable of change because every time we try to persuade them to change, we're mindlessly ignoring the perspective that motivated the behavior in the first place. So everybody's behavior makes sense if we look at the sense it makes, and then the person has a choice. As I said before, do you want to be less flexible? I'm asking you, Gabby, do you want it? Probably not.
No.
But if you want to be less inconsistent, you have to give up being flexible. It's your choice. All right. But now, if I were involved with you, that now I see, gee, you're being inconsistent is a function of your being flexible. I don't want you to change anymore. And the relationship then improves. All right. When you see somebody in a negative light, you communicate that to them. There's probably little else that's as bad for a relationship. Once you recognize that we're not really quite as different as we tend to think. If you felt what I felt, you would do what I do. If, you and I have our hand on a radiator and it gets hot and I quickly take my hand up, you're not more courageous than I am. If your hand hurt the way my hand hurt, you'd also remove your hand from the radiator. Now, there's a lot underneath all of this, and we don't have time to unpack it. But let me tell you where this life leads to when you do all that unpacking, is that we come to recognize that all of us are valuable. All of us have talents. And the idea of seeing any of us as better than any other of us is the mistake. Everybody knows something, and everybody doesn't know something. Everybody can do something, and everybody can't do other things. And that we tend to evaluate people as you either have it, and then the presumption is you have everything, once I received that genius award, I'm telling you, every time I make a mistake, people say, you're a genius. There's an assumption, a halo effect.
Right.
And it's very important. It's very important because we set up the world in so many ways on a normal distribution. Some of us have almost none of whatever it is, how talent, beauty, it doesn't matter. Most of us have a middle amount, and then you have the real winners at the end. And I take this apart in the book as well and say, well, who decided what the criteria should be in the first place?
Yeah. I'd love to just squeeze in something about mindlessness, because we've touched on it a couple of times. You say every limit you place on yourself is a result of your mindlessness. And
Yes.
you also talk a lot
So
about
our mind, when
we're mindless most of the time. So I'd love you to go into
we
that.
are. Okay. So when you're mindless, you're letting the past dictate the present. You're buying into absolutes. 1 and 1 is 2. Horses don't eat meat. Joe shouldn't have any extramarital affairs, whatever it is, without paying attention to the current situation. You're not in the present. When you're mindful, you're paying no attention to context, perspective. You're not able to exercise any control. You're just doing what you think you were supposed to do without realizing there's a choice. It's interesting because, okay, so I give examples in the book, but let me make one. So when I started to lecture, I was young, and I would walk into the room, and when they had the stage here and the audience far away, it made me nervous. So I moved the chairs to make a smaller difference between me and them, right?
Yeah.
Now, and then it would go just fine. I doubt that most people think to do this. They just accept whatever is. Whereas if you said to them, could you move the chairs so they're closer to you? I think everybody would say yes. Mm-hmm. But when you're mindless, it just doesn't occur to you. And if it doesn't occur to you, you can't make use of it. All right. So when we're mindless, we're trapped in a rigid perspective, and we're oblivious to that. And this happens with every time we're casting aspersions, because we're acting as if that person's behavior could only be understood in one way, and we know the one way, rather than a positive way. Every time we're certain of anything, we're being mindless. People, even sports, this is the one that's such fun, not for your best athletes, your professional athletes. They tend somehow to not fall into this trap. But the rest of us are taught, just keep doing it over and over and over again until it becomes second nature. Mm-hmm. Well, yep. What that really means is just do it over and over again until you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
And you always want to think about it, because as soon as you put yourself on automatic pilot, there's some new situation that can throw you for a loop. So let's say you're playing tennis and you practice against the same person or a ball machine, and that's great. And now you think you know it. And we talk about things like body memory or muscle memory. Okay. Now you're out in a game. This one matters to you. Turns out the person is left-handed. You're going to lose, because everything you're taught is based on how a right-handed person is going to return that ball. Mm. All right. So doesn't mean we shouldn't practice, but the way people practice tends to lead to imperfect. Practice doesn't lead to perfect unless each time you practice, you're looking for how this moment is different from the other. Mm. All right. People say when you're doing a sport, learn the basics so you don't have to think about them. Well, who decided what the basics are? And so if you mindlessly buy into somebody else's basics, you're not going to do as well as you might otherwise. You're a woman, Gabby. I'm a woman. How tall are you?
5'6".
How tall are you? 5'6". Okay, you're a tall woman. I'm 5'3". But let's say the world of how to do whatever it is was designed by a 6'4" man. All right. Yeah. That means he designed it so it's going to work for him.
Yeah.
And the more different you are from him, the more important it is that you don't do it mindlessly, that you don't mindlessly follow the rules, but that you use the rules, the instructions to guide what you're doing, not to overly determine it. All right. So when we're mindless, rules and routines determine what we're doing, even if they no longer make any sense. When we're mindful, we're present to know how to subtly move things around. Mm-hmm. When you're mindless, you're an automaton, and you're essentially, since you're not there, you're not growing. I think when you're mindful, the neurons are firing. When they're not firing, you're dying. And more important, at the moment is that you're not having a good time.
Mm.
You can't be mindless and have a good time.
So how do we become more awake then? Because I think many sleepwalk for a lot of their life. And I'm not blaming again. I'm guilty of it myself. Like, is it just being more aware?
Well, people say stop and smell the roses or be in the present, and all that's sweet, but it's mindless. Because again, when you're not there to know you're not there, so you can't correct it.
Yeah.
But there are things that we can do. Going forward, anything you learn mindfully. What does that mean? Learn it conditionally. Maybe it would seem that kind of, not this absolute. All right. That every time you find yourself belittling somebody, recognize that it's your mindlessness that's leading to that. Anytime you're stressed, you're being mindless. Events don't cause stress. It's your view of the event that causes stress. You change your view, you'll diminish or eliminate the stress. When something doesn't work for you, it's typically you're doing it in a single way. Vary the ways you're doing it. Everything can be done in multiple ways. You're disappointed because you didn't get X. Whatever the X is, all of that is made up. We talk ourselves into these needs and wants. Now, people don't realize, this is a big one, that emotions are choices. That emotions follow from our understanding of the situation. So let's say you meet somebody and you see him as a snob. So you feel bad, right? Because you feel belittled. Yeah. But you could have just as easily seen him as shy. Yeah. They're going to look the same. And if they're shy, then you might go over and try to, begin a friendship and be caring and so on. And a friendship might evolve regardless of whether he was shy or a snob to begin with. All right, so our feelings follow from our views. And when you're mindless, you don't have a choice of views. So every time you're reacting to something with some negative emotion, you're being mindless.
Wow.
That's just for starters.
And we've just scratched the surface. This is how we get to basically a mindful utopia then.
Right. Yeah, that when people, okay, so look, 45 years of research, we find when you're more mindful, it leads you to health, and you live longer. It leads you to being happier. People like you more. People find you authentic when you're mindful. People find you charismatic. So your relationships improve. It even leaves its imprint on the work, the things that we do. Everything is better. And it's so easy that there's no reason not to be more mindful. Now, there's data, some stuff in the book that's sort of almost a little woo-woo, but how our mindfulness is contagious. The more of us that are mindful, the more people we influence to be mindful and help to change the world. And that is my goal and the reason for me being here today.
I love it. And what a wonderful way to conclude the episode. Final question. What is a simple, actionable first step we can take when it comes to being more mindful and less mindless that will help us on our mission to building a happier life?
To accept that not knowing is the rule, allow ourselves not to know. And so then we can put ourselves in a position to find out, and everything becomes new again.
Wonderful stuff. So for more on you, there's absolutely plenty. Obviously, The Mindful Body is the latest book, but if people head to your website, it's www.ellenlanger.me, and you're on Instagram as well, Ellen J. Langer, and we'll add this to the episode show notes too. It's really been such a privilege reading your material and watching you on YouTube and listening to podcasts. It's opened up my eyes. It's woke me up a little bit, I think. Certainly. So thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Gabby.
Hello, friends. It's Gabby back with you. If you are suffering with your mental health, there is a crisis button on the My Possible Self app, which will signpost you to the correct information for immediate expert advice. Those of you who are listening on one of the podcast platforms, the My Possible Self app is completely free to download. You can access all of the content, so you don't need to worry about it costing you anything. If you found this episode helpful, please do subscribe and leave a review and share it with your friends. And to find and follow us on social media, we are most active on Instagram, and you can find us at My Possible Self. And I've been at Radio Gabby. Until the next one, do take care. Bye for now.